So are they going to keep up with inflation?
Inflation is the challenge when it comes to real wages. Rising wages will be driven by the forces that I've said. So that's why this election is so important. Well, the Reserve Bank says by the end of 23. That's what the Reserve Bank says. That's their most recent forecast, is by the end of 23.
So
mid to 23 to late 23.
Their wages will stop
This
going
is
backwards?
Well, what I can tell you is it'll take even longer if you have policies, as the Labor Party propose, which means not managing money, not being able to afford the promises they're making. That only puts further pressure on inflation and more upward pressure on interest rates. I've been very candid with Australians about the economic challenges that we're facing. And you're right to highlight the challenges that are there with real wages. Labor has no magic bullet on this. They have no magic pen or magic wand.
But nor do you.
That's exactly right. That's why the only way you get wages is by good, sensible economic policies that drive down unemployment and that support growth in the economy, which enables businesses to be able to pay their staff more. There's no money tree that small businesses and businesses have. I mean, many of you will know that during the course of the pandemic. You worked for companies that had to go on JobKeeper. You worked for companies that were facing great global threats when it came to the forces of Google and others, which meant that many of you were taking pay cuts.
So
now, you know that wages can only increase in the private sector if the businesses you work for are actually doing better. And that's what our policies... No, I'm saying wages are rising and will rise. The challenge is inflation. The challenge is inflation, and that's a global challenge. So I draw your attention to the facts. Let's focus on the facts. In Australia, inflation 5.1%. In New Zealand, almost 7%. In the United States, 8.5%. Let's talk about interest rates. In Australia, they went up 25 basis points off record lows of 0.1. In New Zealand, they went up 125 basis points. Excuse me, I'm answering the question. 125 basis points they went up in New Zealand. 90 basis points, 75 basis points they went up in the United Kingdom and in the United States and in Canada. So on whichever way you look at it, Australia, under our policies, has put up an economic shield to protect Australians from the impacts of rising inflation around the world and rising interest rates. And that's what Australians need. If you risk Australia's economic management and the management of our budget with a Labor leader in Anthony Albanese, who was a loose unit on the economy, didn't know what the unemployment rate was, didn't know what the cash rate was, makes up wages policy on the run with no thought to what it means for inflation or interest rates, a shadow treasurer who thinks you can just have a few $1 billion loosely spraying around and it's no big deal, well, that is a big risk to you. And that's why this election is a choice between a stronger economy and a weaker one, and a certain one and an uncertain one.